The mountains in this place, they were cited in this time period by this person. By whom? Alright, so something's wrong with by whom. It's not these guys. By this person who so named them, named the mountains, or named it. Well, mountains is plural, so it's not this one. The answer is D. Okay, so what's going on here? We basically have a subject here. It's capitalized, and sometimes capitalized things are single entities, but in this case, the Glass House Mountains, this group of mountains, we're told this is plural. So we know this is plural later on when we are choosing between D and E, but we're choosing between who so named it and who so named them. Well, you know it's plural because of this plural verb were, and so to be consistent, the answer has to be them. So it has to be D. So who so named them, so this James Cook guy named the mountains supposedly because of their. Again, this is plural and that matches up correctly. So that's why D is the correct answer. This phrase here, by James Cook, by whom they were named, this by whom phrasing in A and B is incorrect. It really should be, by James Cook, who blah 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 blah. So D and E make sense. So what about C? Naming them, supposedly since they're naming, well, any ing verb here seems like it's introducing a descriptive phrase with an ing. So this descriptive phrase would have to describe the subject. So it would almost be like naming them blah blah blah, the Glass House Mountains blah 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 blah. But it's not the Glass House Mountains that were naming it. It was Jim Cook who was naming it. So it doesn't make sense to start this phrase with an ing verb naming. So that's why C is no good. So looking back, as a recap, we first read the sentence, immediately spotted this noun phrase, and determined that this noun phrase was plural because of the word were. Knowing this, we continued reading. Then we saw that this phrasing by whom was incorrect, and so we got rid of A and B. Then we went over to D and E because that sounds more correct. And then between D and E, because mountains is plural, we ended up choosing D. And just to make sure, we looked at C, an ing verb, which doesn't make sense because you can't start this phrase as an ing verb because that would mean that phrase would have to describe mountains, which doesn't make sense. So that's why through this thought process, we ended up with D as the final answer.